They counted her food. Every bag of grain, every jar, every root vegetable she carried inside before the first freeze. And when the numbers didn't add up, they whispered, "She won't make it to spring." But here's what none of them understood. She wasn't trying to survive the winter above ground. She had already built something beneath it. Before we go underground with her, you need to understand what she was up against, because this wasn't a cold snap. This wasn't a rough week in January where you crank the thermostat and wait it out. This was a mountain winter, the kind that swallows settlements whole, the kind of cold where the air doesn't just chill you, it claims you. At these temperatures, exposed skin doesn't ache, it burns. A slow, crawling fire that starts at your fingertips and works inward until your body starts making decisions without you. First, your hands stop cooperating, then your thoughts, then your legs feel like borrowed things. And the cruelest part, you don't feel yourself going. Most people imagine freezing to death as a dramatic collapse in the snow. But that's not how it happens. What actually kills people is quieter. Your body starts pulling heat away from your extremities, your hands, your feet, your face, and hoarding it around your core. It's trying to protect your vital organs, but in doing so, it starts rationing the very thing keeping you conscious. Heat loss, confusion, exhaustion, and then stillness. But here's what the townspeople still didn't know, and what almost every settlement in that era got fatally wrong about surviving a hard winter. The danger in a mountain winter isn't just the cold outside your walls, it's the cold inside them. In a standard cabin, a fire warms the air, but the moment that fire dies, and in a bad winter fires do die, the cold seeps back in through every crack, every gap, every poorly insulated wall. You wake up and the temperature inside has dropped 20 degrees overnight. You can't grow food in that. You can barely survive in that. And the townspeople, the ones tracking her supplies, counting her jars, watching her smoke, they knew this. They'd lived it. They'd lost neighbors to it. Hard winters didn't forgive mistakes, and they'd watched enough people starve quietly behind closed doors to recognize the signs. She had no livestock, no smoke from cooking fires burning long and hot, no hunting, no visible trade, no relatives bringing provisions. By their math, she was already living on borrowed time. What they couldn't account for, what none of them had ever seen, was that she had stopped trying to fight the winter from above. She had gone underneath it. Here's the thing about the earth that most people alive today have completely forgotten. 6 feet down. It doesn't freeze. Not in a mountain winter. Not in a blizzard. Not at temperatures that crack tree bark and turn rivers into stone. 6 feet below the surface, the ground maintains a temperature of somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, almost regardless of what the sky is doing above it. The Earth is the original insulator. It has been storing solar heat from the warmer months, holding it the way a clay pot holds water, slowly, steadily, without losing a drop. And she knew this. What she was building is called a Wallapini. And the people who've never heard of it are exactly the people who struggle most to survive hard winters. A Wallapini, a word that comes from the Aymara people of Bolivia and roughly translates to place of warmth, is a sunken greenhouse, dug directly into the earth, deep enough that the surrounding soil acts as natural insulation on every side. Not a regular greenhouse balanced on top of frozen ground, losing heat through every glass pane and timber corner. This structure goes down if this story is making you think differently about what survival actually looks like. Not stockpiling, not toughness, but knowledge. Then you're exactly who this channel is for. Please subscribe to our channel. Back to the story. She had been digging for weeks before the first real freeze hit. Every night, after the light went flat and the temperature started dropping, she would disappear behind her cabin with a pickaxe and a shovel. And every morning she would emerge with dirt on her hands and say nothing. The townspeople watched. They speculated. Some thought she was burying something, hoarding something she didn't want others to find. Some thought the isolation was getting to her mind. And this is where most people, even well-meaning ones, make a critical mistake. They assume that if something looks strange, it must be wrong. But the most effective survival techniques often look like madness from the outside. She wasn't losing her mind. She was engineering her survival. Here's what she was actually building step by step. First, the pit itself. Dug 6 to 8 feet deep, deep enough to get below the frost line, deep enough to tap into the Earth's stored warmth, wide enough to grow in, rectangular, sloped slightly toward the south to catch every degree of available winter sunlight. Second, the roof. She salvaged what she could. Old glass panes, scraps of timber, anything that could let light in while keeping cold out. The angle mattered. In winter, the sun sits low on the horizon. A steeply angled roof catches that low light and channels it directly into the growing space. Flat glass would have wasted it. Third, the heat source. And this is the part that surprises people most. She had no furnace, no coal, no wood-burning system wired into the structure. She used manure, layered into the growing beds with compost and organic material. Decomposing manure generates its own heat. It's a biological process. Microbes breaking down organic matter, releasing warmth as a byproduct. Farmers have known this for centuries. Hotbeds built on composting manure can raise soil temperature by 15 to 20 degrees above ambient. In a structure already insulated by 6 feet of earth on every side, that additional heat doesn't escape. It accumulates. And this mistake is why most people would have died by now, because almost everyone facing a hard winter asks the wrong question. They ask, how long will my food last? She asks something completely different, and that single shift in thinking is what separated her from everyone around her. The result is a growing environment that, even when the world above is locked in sub-zero temperatures, maintains enough warmth for cold, hardy crops to not just survive, but thrive. But she wasn't done yet, and winter wasn't waiting. The cold came in hard that year, harder than the old-timers could remember, the kind of winter that tests everything, your stores, your walls, your nerve. And the townspeople began to feel it. What happens next is the part that most survival stories skip over, because it's not dramatic, it's just slow and grinding and ruthless. Livestock started struggling. Animals that needed more feed just to maintain body heat in the dropping temperatures were burning through stores faster than anyone had planned. Families who thought they'd packed enough suddenly found themselves rationing, then rationing harder. The community had a way of doing things that had worked for years. Firewood stacked high, root cellars packed with preserved goods, grain measured out across the months. It was a system built on experience, and experience had kept them alive before. But this winter was different. The freeze came early and settled deep. The root cellars, dug shallow and lined with stone, weren't insulated well enough to prevent losses. Some stored vegetables froze through. Some preserved goods were burned up faster, cooking more, warming bodies that were burning extra calories just staying upright. And through it all, she stayed quiet. No requests for help, no visits to ask for provisions, no signs of distress. And this is the part that started to unsettle people more than her strangeness had. Because struggling people ask for help. Starving people show signs. She showed none. One of the older men in the settlement, a man who had survived 3 hard winters himself, started watching her more closely. He noticed she would disappear behind the cabin long before dark and not return for hours. He noticed that there was never a long plume of cooking smoke, and yet she didn't look gaunt. She didn't move like someone underfed. He began to wonder if he'd missed something. By the time the worst stretch hit, 3 weeks of temperatures that made going outside a negotiation with your own survival, the community had pulled inward. Families stayed close to their own fires. Sharing became harder when everyone was short. The quiet tension of a community watching its own margins shrink. And then one morning, she walked into the center of the settlement, carrying carrots. Fresh ones, roots still attached. Not preserved, not pickled, not pulled from a jar. Grown. What he found when he followed her changed everything, not just for him, for the entire settlement. And once you see what was underground, you'll never look at a hard winter the same way again. No one said anything at first. They just stared, because fresh carrots in the middle of a hard freeze were not something that happened. Fresh carrots meant growing soil. Growing soil meant warmth. Warmth meant what? How? She didn't explain. She just set them down and went back to her cabin. The next morning she came with greens. The morning after that, a basket. And this is the moment where everything the community thought they understood about winter survival stopped making sense. She was feeding herself. More than feeding herself. She had surplus. In the worst winter in memory, with everyone else rationing and worrying and tightening their belts, she had more than she needed. The old man followed her first. He watched her go behind the cabin in the early morning light. Watched her kneel at what he'd always assumed was a cellar door. Watched her open it and drop down. He followed, and what he found below the frozen ground stopped him completely. Green in every direction, not scraggly, frost-burned green. Healthy, upright, thriving green. Rows of kale with thick, dark leaves. Radishes pushing up through rich, dark soil. Spinach spreading wide and flat. Carrots pulling deep, onion shoots standing straight. The air was warm. Not heated room warm, not a dry artificial warmth. Something better. The warmth of living soil. The warmth of things growing. Light came through the angled glass roof at exactly the right angle, spread across the beds in long, low bands of winter sun. The walls around them were solid earth, not timber and gap. The cold above might as well have been another world. She was kneeling at one of the beds, working with quiet confidence. She looked up at him like she'd been expecting him for weeks. "The earth keeps what the sky tries to take," she said. And those 8 words contain more practical survival knowledge than most people will learn in a lifetime. Here's what was actually happening inside that structure, because the science is as remarkable as the result. The 6-foot-deep walls of packed earth surrounding the Wallapini act as a thermal mass. All summer, all autumn, the ground absorbs solar energy. That stored energy doesn't dissipate in a single cold snap. It holds. And in winter, it radiates that stored warmth back into the enclosed space. Slowly, steadily, the way a brick fireplace stays warm long after the fire dies. The angled glass roof admits low winter sunlight, the precise angle that a vertical wall would reflect away, and traps it inside. The interior stays brighter during daylight hours than a conventional greenhouse on the surface, and when the sun sets, the earth walls hold what they've collected. The composting beds add biological heat from below. Roots grow down into warmth. Plants that would freeze within an hour above ground live and grow and produce below it. The structure requires no fuel, no constant maintenance, no fire that can die. It works because she understood something most modern people have completely unlearned. That the earth is not an obstacle to work around. It's a resource. It has been storing energy for months, waiting for something intelligent enough to make use of it. She had made use of it. This is the difference between surviving and thriving in a hard winter. And it has nothing to do with how much you've stockpiled. It has everything to do with what you know. She didn't turn them away. That would have been easy and understandable. They'd whispered about her, counted her food like she was already a problem to be managed, assumed failure because they couldn't see what she was building, but she didn't turn them away. She taught them. Over the remaining weeks of winter, they came down one by one. First the curious, then the desperate, then the proud who had nowhere else to go. She walked each of them through what she'd built and why, the angle of the roof, the depth of the pit, the composition of the beds, the crops that thrive without full summer sun. Kale, spinach, carrots, radishes, beets, arugula, green onions, cold-tolerant herbs, plants that ask very little from the sky because they get everything they need from the ground. She showed them which crops could be started from seed in the Walapini while the world above was still frozen, so they'd be ready to transplant the moment spring arrived. She showed them how the growing season didn't have to start in April, it could start in February. In January, whenever you decided to stop waiting and start growing. And this is the insight that most people miss entirely, even people who think they're prepared. Survival is not just about what you can store, it's about what you can produce. Storage has an end date, production doesn't. A root cellar will run out, a Walapini keeps growing. And there's something else she understood that most survival thinking misses. The point is not to be isolated. The point is to have something real to offer when things get hard, so that isolation becomes a choice rather than a sentence. She could have kept the Walapini to herself, survived the winter alone, watched her neighbors struggle, emerged in spring with no debts owed and no relationships complicated. But knowledge hoarded in a crisis is just another form of waste. What she gave the community was more than fresh vegetables in February. It was a framework, a way of looking at winter not as something to endure, but as something to work with. The cold above ground was still brutal. Nothing changed about the temperature. The wind still came. The sky was still flat and gray for weeks at a time. But underground, none of that mattered. And that is the oldest survival principle there is. Not strength against nature, but intelligence working with it. She didn't fight the winter. She found the place where the winter couldn't reach. She built there, she grew there, and when the people who had underestimated her were finally desperate enough to follow her below the frost line, she handed them seeds. Not charity, not rescue, knowledge. By spring, 4 families in the settlement had begun digging their own Walapinis. They didn't have hers finished yet, didn't have her experience, but they had the knowledge, and they had seen, with their own eyes, in the coldest winter they could remember, what that knowledge made possible. Fresh carrots in February, greens when the sky was still gray, baskets when everyone else was counting their last jars. There is a reason the old homesteaders said that the most important thing you could carry into a hard winter was not food. It was understanding. Food runs out, understanding compounds. She knew something the rest of them didn't. And because she knew it, and because she was willing to teach it, a community that might have starved slowly through a brutal winter came out the other side with something more valuable than they'd had going in. Not just survival, capability. The earth keeps what the sky tries to take. Learn to work with the ground beneath you, and the winter above you loses most of its power. That's not folklore, that's not sentiment. That's 6 feet of soil holding 55 degrees while the surface sits at -20. That's biology, physics, and ancient knowledge, all pointing at the same answer. Go underground and grow. See you in the next one.